Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, 4 nerds, by nerds, hang out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
And today we delve back into Eberron and why 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons needs it, and this time we're talking reimagined races.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So delving back into our series of 10 reasons why Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition needs Eberron, we're going to with reimagined races now. And we're actually going to start in the distant lands of Zinjarek, which is kind of like this jungle wilderness. There's, a frontier city of Stormreach there where people kind of come in and venture out from there. But a trade is come from basically exploring the ruins from the giants. But there's kind of maybe an obstacle, maybe guides, depending on how you want to look at it.
We got the jungle drow. Now, drow still are your typical race in some views because they're still on that cusp of evil. But
I would say dark. They're not quite as evil as like Forgotten Realms drow.
Okay.
And they're more varied. And
absolutely.
That is like one of the huge keys. Like, basically they're like, well, here are some of the drow that have been encountered, but for the most part, there's tons that haven't because Zinjarek is unexplored. It's a huge wilderness.
And that right there gives you the option of, you say, you know what, I want to take my own twist, my own turn with this, so I'm going to put my drow in Eberron. They're going to be different.
Right. Yeah. You have your room for expansion. You can change things. And the ones we had, like, typically, like, most people, when they think of drow from Eberron, they think of basically tattooed savages and sacrifices and things like that. But we have, like, three main branches that are the ones that have been mostly encountered so far.
All right. So first we have the Worshippers of Volcor. Now, typically, when people think of drow, they think of the Spider Queen. So this has been a...
Think Scorpion King.
It's Think Scorpion King. You have a drow, torso attached to a giant scorpion body. They use scorpion venom to ritually tattoo their skin or ritually scar their skin, which gives it this raised white markings on their skin, which I think is pretty awesome. They view that all spiders are like the subservience of this guy, so there's still that
Arachnids.
There's still that attachment to the drow that we all know and love. But it's definitely twisted. It's now done a more patriarchal society as opposed to matriarchal. So it's definitely turned the whole.
Or at least the god is too.
Right.
It is per se, but the actual society itself might be more gender neutral as far as who's in power, who's in control. Yeah, I think they're very tribal and warrior society. So I think the best warriors are gonna lead.
So the next sect of drow are the ones that that worship fire, and this is the Solitar. They all drow were slaves of the giants in the past age, or in the past, I should say. And here they feel that they want to follow in the footsteps of their masters, get the secrets that were taught to the giants by the dragons, and these are the ones that want to eventually make their way to the land of fire. That's their promised land, if you will.
Yeah, and they're also huge in the elemental binding, primarily, as you might guess, fire elementals.
Indeed. So they are a twist away from the Volcor or the Worshippers of Volcor, because they think that they've got it completely wrong. They want to go more towards the fire and the elemental magic.
And they believe by following the ways of the masters, they kind of become the masters, sort of deal. They have to perfect that, and so they're always trying to lay claims to the giant ruins and stuff like that. So adventurers may come into conflict with them or be used by them,
especially if you're trying to get in and plunder any of the secrets that the drow think belong to them.
Exactly. That brings us with the third type, Umberjin. And these ones, they have binded themselves to the power of shadow, and they are fighting a secret war right now, and they're losing it badly, but they're too proud to seek outside help. and they're hoping that perhaps, within the ruins of Zendrick somewhere, they will be able to find the secret, find the key to winning this war. But they're fighting against the Dackle.
Nice. All right, so next we move on to probably my favorite portion of the reimagined races. Don't get me wrong, Drow are pretty awesome, but we have dinosaur riding halflings on the Talentia Plains, or however you guys want to pronounce it. That's how I do it. And they feel that they're more, or not they feel, they are more savage. They feel that when you go through this rite of passage, this trial, you find a dinosaur and bond with it. Probably almost in the same kind of way that a paladin bonds with his celestial mount or fiendish mount, depending upon what you want to do. But here, they put on these tribal masks that they feel that once it's on, they are connected in spirit with the dinosaurs that they ride, and they're savage, they're nomadic, they're constantly traveling. It's such a divergent from the comfort loving pot-bellied halflings that you're used to hearing tales about, that I want to sit and have a meal and drink some tea and put my feet up like you see in some of the Lord of the Rings movies. These guys, utterly savage, utterly nomadic. They don't care about possessions because it's more of a problem to constantly be packing it up and hauling it wherever you're going.
Yeah, it's more about what you can carry because, again, they're nomads. And yes, these are very much a divergent from your hobbits. They're not your typical halfling, that's for sure. They only have one settlement, Gatherhold, and that's the only permanent settlement they have on Talenta Plains. And I believe also that's where there's some connection to the Mark of Hospitality, as well as the Mark of Healing. Durasco and Galadriel, I might be saying that wrong, are those two houses that are connected to the halflings. But for the most part, the halflings of the Dragon Mark houses, they've kind of civilized, but they still do have ties to the Talenta Plains. And also in 3rd edition, there were specific weapons that the halflings would use as well. So they're hunters, they're gatherers, they're nomads. They're much more primitive and savage than any of the other halflings. Of course, you have like your typical halflings you would expect from other worlds, like Forgotten Realms, that are like in the cities and the towns and have moved away from the Talenta Plains in those ways. And then you also have, halflings that kind of skirt both worlds, right, and they go back and forth.
So the book was actually talking about, it's like, okay, you have the ones in the civilized world, you have the nomads, and the ones that go back and forth, they hold their tribal masks, they have their primitive clothing, for lack of a better word, and when they go into the city, they'll actually put on regular clothes, and I'm going to be a regular citizen, and hi, how are you doing? And then when they're ready to go back out on the plains, they take off all this, unnecessary clothing, stuff it in a satchel, and they're off on their leather breeches with their mask on their dinosaur, and off they go.
I kind of view those ones as the more opportunist of the halflings, and I see them kind of like using their places in both to their advantage.
I also see those as the ones that are going to be kind of fit more for the adventurer lifestyle. All right, so next we move on to the Zill, or the Gnomes of Largo.
Now, these guys are kind of known for House Civis, which is the mark of scribing. They're also known as information brokers. You have the Kornenberg Library. You have the Chronicle, which is like a newspaper that everyone kind of relies on in the Five Nations. Their government is a very light touch. It's almost unseen, but don't think they're not watching, because they are.
Yeah, it's actually you could walk around and be like, wow, there is no city watch, there is no policing going on, and to an outsider, it might seem like, oh, well, I could just do whatever I want, but they have this organization that's called the Trust, and you never know who's actually a part of it, so you could go do something wrong, and the person who was like your accomplice, or was looking from down the street, could totally just rat you out, because these guys are like the best at information brokering, and every bit of information, every scrap, every detail is worth something, because you never know when that's going to become important, when that's going to become useful.
Right. Or it even could be that, your gnome buddy is the one that slipped a poison stiletto between your ribs.
Well, there is that as well.
So the gnomes, even though they seem hands off and light touch, when the trust has to get involved, they will.
Oh.
They will use the information for their benefit, for profit, but they also for control as well. And if they have to step in, they will. They're also known for their shipwrights. Even the other houses go to Largo to get their stuff built, as do the Lazarus principalities, and they're all like pirate kings out there. So they're so widely respected for their ability as shipwrights as well. And then also, like, reading the novels, they always talk about how dangerous going to Largo is, and you have to be careful about what you say and what you hear.
Because what you hear is not always guaranteed to be true, and what you say, can and will bite you in the ass if you're not careful.
Yeah, it is recording, and like the trust is like the ultimate big brother, in my opinion, and they're always watching.
Absolutely, and it's like I couldn't imagine what the trust would do, with today's technology.
And it kind of reminds me a little bit, if you guys are familiar with the game Paranoia and Friend Computer. Like, yes. That's what going to Largo is. It's like you just left Dungeons and Dragons and entered a game of Paranoia.
That's so true. That's a great corollary.
But so, really, like, if you look at even these three races, they open up so many opportunities in your game. Largo gives you a huge opportunity to do espionage and spy type game, a spy type game, whereas Zendrick is completely about adventuring, dungeon crawling, and exploration.
And the Talentia Plains, you could totally get into a more Savage World type game. Like either, you're a part of the Halfling tribe, or you've been kidnapped by them or raised by them, for whatever story reasons you want to come up with. So you've got this minimalistic kind of view where every day is a struggle just to survive.
Right. Just by reimagining these three races, Eberron gives you a ton of different ways to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Absolutely.
But the question is, how would you use it in your game? And when is Wizards of the Coast going to give us Eberron in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can hang out with us on Facebook.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.